Hello people. So there's a few issues I want to cover today. First of all, I can't make this video without commenting at least a little bit on the huge rallies in France today. Possibly 1.5 million people in Paris and up to 1 million in other cities across France, including Marseille, which has the largest Muslim population in France. This was a show of unity, organised to show that France is a united country. And the overall vibe of today, the impression I get, has been positive. There have been people from all backgrounds, French Jews, French Catholics, French Muslims, French atheists, and people from all over the world. And one notable thing was the presence of world leaders, David Cameron, Angela Merkel, Matteo Renzi. There's been a whole selection of world leaders there. Very memorable images in Paris today. A lot of people, of course, holding signs saying "Je suis Charlie," but also lots of flags and a lot of non-political messages at all. I think it's a good thing. I mean, there's no possible way anyone could say anything negative about an event like that. But as someone pointed out, that isn't going to automatically change everything. Islamism still exists and ideology is still out there. This is a long-term struggle. Now, the main thing I want to talk about in this video concerns a country, a country that has a human rights record which I think is nothing short of abysmal. And it's not a coincidence, I don't think, that the country I'm about to talk about is in many ways the birthplace of Islamism. It is the birthplace of Wahhabism and Salafism, which are the two ideologies that harbour the seeds of Islamism. If you look at Wahhabist and Salafist thinking, it is very extreme, very intolerant, and it has its origins in Saudi Arabia. Just looking up some background here, give you a little bit more information. Yeah, this is a hadith which quotes Muhammad saying, "The people of my own generation are the best, then those who come after them, and then those who come the next generation is seen as a call to Muslims to follow the examples of the first three generations." So that's the fundamental ideology behind Salafism. But they are a dominant minority in Saudi Arabia, and they have a very big influence in that part of the world. It's been said, German intelligence sources have suggested that Salafism is the fastest growing Islamic movement in the world. If that's true, it's very concerning. But Salafism is, as far as I'm concerned, a very extreme movement. But anyway, I want to get straight to the main issue I want to talk about in Saudi Arabia, which is the case of a young blogger, Raif Bedawi. The Saudi authorities went ahead despite international protests and flogged this young man for the conviction of cybercrime and insulting Islam. I'm reading here from the BBC report. He was sentenced to 1,000 lashes, 10 years in jail, and to be flogged 50 times a day over a period of weeks until the initial sentence of 1,000 lashes is carried out. Then he will serve 10 years in jail. He was the co-founder of an now-banned website called the Liberal Saudi Network and was arrested in 2012. Furthermore, he was ordered to pay a fine of 1 million rials. In 2013 he was cleared of apostasy, which could have carried a death sentence. His lawyer was sentenced to 15 years in prison after being found guilty of a range of offences in an anti-terrorism court. And the lashings today took place in the city of Jeddah after Friday prayers. Now, I cannot think of any adjectives strong enough to express how disgusted I am at the absolute barbarity of the Saudi regime, that they could do this to a man simply for having an opinion. he had called for more freedom of expression in Saudi Arabia. Of course, groups like Amnesty International have been all over the case. Western governments have protested, but I still believe that we remain far too close to this despotic, brutal, savage, anti-human regime. And I don't care how many people it insults, because as far as I'm concerned, I may have never met that man in my life, but I have a duty as a human being to say something in protest at this. And that's minimal. If it means just making a video and expressing my views, I want to say I am with Raif Bedawi and every other advocate of free speech in the world, and especially in societies like Saudi Arabia. What we should be doing as a nation is recalling the Saudi ambassador immediately. And I think it is absolutely twisted hypocrisy that the Saudi regime would condemn the terrorist attacks in France, and yet carry out a sentence like this, which is a brutal attack on free expression. This arrogant, callous, cruel regime basically seems to think they can do what they want. And I think it's about time powerful Western allies like the United States and Britain really start to evaluate our relationship with this dictatorship. This is the same regime, incidentally, that sentenced charged two women with terrorism for the crime of driving a car. You'd be hard pushed to find a place in the world that has a much more brutal record in human rights than Saudi Arabia. There'd be a few contenders: North Korea, Uzbekistan, but I think even Iran isn't this extreme. I've got Iranian female friends, and they say even in Iran they can get away with doing things that would be taboo. That's not to say it's easy there, but they can get away with it. Saudi Arabia really gets the gold medal in brutality when it comes to human rights, and I really think we need to be sending out a strong message. Now, the last time I made a video on human rights in Saudi Arabia, it got a lot of negative responses from Saudis. I want to clarify my position on that. Firstly, charges that I am a racist are beyond crap, so I'm not even going to humour them. In fact, the whole point here is I am standing up for a Saudi man. So, go figure. But the idea that Saudi Arabia is above criticism is obnoxious. Yeah, it'll be just 1 minute! The idea that Saudi Arabia or any country is above criticism is utterly obnoxious. It's not. And it should be mercilessly criticised for this act of inhumanity, which, by the way, is against international law. But there's a few other things I'd like to say. It is absolutely right that Western media covers this case. It is absolutely right that there is pressure put on the Saudi authorities. In my opinion, there is far too little pressure put on them. But I cannot comprehend such a monstrous sentence, and I don't know how much hope there is for Mr. Bedawi that he will not be sentenced to prison. It sounds an awful thing to say, but it would almost be more humane if he was executed immediately. And that's still something that I would find barbaric, but what they're putting this man through is incomprehensible. 1,000 lashes, a fine, and 10 years in jail. They've basically destroyed this man's life. And if that's how they treat a blogger, it just defies comprehension. But yeah, back to the point I was making. When I made a video about Saudi Arabia, I got quite a big backlash from Saudis. If you are Saudi and you're watching this, if you think this man deserved a sentence, you can go and fuck yourself. I have no respect for you, I have no respect for your thinking, and I will not apologise to you or other fascists of your kind. In terms of it being directed at Saudi Arabia, just to be clear, I'm directing it at the Saudi regime, not the country. When I meet people for the first time, I always give them the benefit of the doubt. I have been on friendly terms with many people around the world who have been from all sorts of regimes that have bad human rights record. I've got many Chinese friends. I've got friends and associates, colleagues from the Middle East. So the idea that I'm a racist is beyond crap. But people need to differentiate between country and government. Now, I am very critical of the Saudi regime, but if the charge is that I'm against Saudi culture, well, it depends how you define culture. If culture is brutal human rights abuses, hell yeah, I'm against it. But in terms of Saudi Arabian cuisine or music or anything like that, I'm sure it's fine. No problem with that. But I will always speak out against inhumanity, always. And if that offends people, I couldn't care less. I really couldn't care less. In fact, I almost hope that people do respond to this video so that other viewers can see how stupid they are and how repressive their mentality is and how thoroughly ignorant they are to basic humanity. Because what is happening to this young man, he's only 30 years old. I mean, it would be barbaric whatever age he was, that's just... But, it's savage. It's inhumane. It's barbaric. The truth is, there's no adjective strong enough to describe what they're doing to him, and I feel helpless and frustrated that I can't do much more. I could write to the Saudi ambassador in London, but he would probably throw the letter out. But what we can do as a nation is take a much, much tougher line on this. I strongly believe we should be recalling the Saudi ambassador tonight, because this is incompatible with our values. I find it baffling that we could be so close to a regime that continues to behave in this way. Now, if we were to recall the Saudi ambassador, they believe that they're above criticism. They believe that they're untouchable. It would send out a strong message. And sometimes I feel anger that our side, frankly, does have a hypocritical record in condemning some regimes, such as Iran, but turning a blind eye to others, like Saudi Arabia. And I do, of course it's to do with geopolitical strategy, because supposedly Saudi Arabia is a big opponent of ISIS. But then, like I say, the Salafism and Wahhabist ideology originates in Saudi Arabia. So we really need to evaluate our role with this country. I don't hate Saudi people, but I have no respect for Saudis who would make excuses for this. I don't have to respect your culture if it's a culture that violates basic human rights. No, I don't respect it. Nor should I be obliged to. If you don't like this video, good, go make another video. But I will say what I'm saying. What's happening to Raif Bedawi and other similar cases is nothing short of barbaric. You think you're a civilized country doing something like this? Shameful. Utterly shameful. And I really think as a nation we need to take a much more consistent and tough stance.